Eli had always believed that he was prepared for anything. As a young soldier stationed on a quiet, remote space station at the edge of the galaxy, he had seen many strange things. He had watched countless ships arrive and leave carrying travelers of all species, but there was one event that would change his life forever. It was a day like any other. The hum of the station's engines echoed through the hallways, and the air was thick with the smell of old metal and recycled air. The crew was busy with routine tasks, keeping the station running smoothly, though there was a quiet tension in the air. The station had been recently warned of an unknown threat approaching from deep and uncharted space. No one knew exactly what it was, but everyone was on edge. Suddenly, an alarm blared across the station, piercing the silence. Eli's heart raced as the lights turned red, signaling an emergency. A ship had crash-landed just outside the station. A vessel unlike any he had ever seen. It was old, battered, and clearly in distress. The ship's hull was covered in strange markings, a language no one on the station could understand. Eli immediately grabbed his gear and rushed to the exit. His fellow soldiers followed him, but there was a hesitancy in their steps. Everyone knew this could be a trap. No one truly trusted the unknown races out there, especially not the ones that lived in the darkest corners of space. They were considered dangerous, unpredictable. As Eli stepped outside, the cold vacuum of space greeted him, his suit's airlock sealing shut as he moved toward the wreckage. His boots made a soft thud against the ground, leaving footprints in the dust of the barren world. The ship had crashed just on the edge of the station, its twisted remains scattered like broken bones in the dust. There, among the wreckage, he saw her, a figure, lying motionless among the debris. It was a woman, or at least she appeared to be. She had features that were both alien and strangely familiar: sharp cheekbones, large eyes, and long silver hair that shimmered like the stars. She was beautiful in a way that made Eli's breath catch in his throat, but there was something more. Something about her looked vulnerable. Without thinking, Eli approached her. His fellow soldiers hesitated, whispering about her species. She was one of the Xyrians, a race that had long been shunned by the rest of the galaxy. Once, they had been fierce warriors, feared by many. The Xyrians had a reputation for being cold and emotionless, their sharp, angular features only adding to the fear they inspired. It was said that their people had brought war and destruction to countless worlds. Now they were exiled, wandering the galaxy in disgrace. But Eli didn't listen to the whispers. He had been raised to believe in helping others no matter their race, no matter their past. His hands trembled slightly as he knelt beside her, checking for signs of life. To his surprise, he found that she was still breathing, though weakly. Blood had soaked into her clothes, and her body was bruised and battered, as if she had been through a terrible struggle. Her eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, Eli could only stare. The alien woman's eyes were a deep, glowing violet, full of pain and confusion. She looked at him, her gaze sharp and calculating, but there was a flicker of fear in them as well. She tried to speak, but her voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. "Why, are you helping me?" Her voice rough. Like gravel, Eli's heart skipped a beat. He had been expecting anger or fear, but her question was one of confusion, not hostility. He had heard stories of the Xyrians and how they viewed the other species with disdain. They were known for their pride, their belief in their superiority. He didn't know what this one wanted, but something in her eyes told him that she wasn't like the others. He took a deep breath, his mind racing. The others were watching, waiting for him to make a decision. There were only two options. He could leave her to die, as many of his comrades suggested, or he could help her, risking his own safety. He knew what was right. "Because you're hurt," he said softly, gently lifting her in his arms. "Everyone deserves a chance, no matter where they come from." The alien woman's eyes widened in surprise. "Everyone," she repeated, as if the concept was foreign to her. Eli nodded, ignoring the whispers from the others around him. He could feel their stares on his back, could hear their murmurs of disbelief. They didn't understand. He couldn't, but Eli had always been different. He wasn't like the others who saw only species and history. He saw people. The woman struggled to sit up, wincing in pain. I don't deserve your help," she said, her voice tinged with regret. My people have done horrible things. We've brought death to so many. Eli shook his head. That's not who you are now. I'm not going to leave you because of something someone else did. As Eli carried her back to the station's medical bay, he couldn't help but wonder. What had brought this alien to such a low point? She had clearly been on the run, and now she was here, relying on the very people who had been taught to fear her. Back at the station, Eli placed her gently on an examination table. The medics worked quickly, treating her wounds and checking. For any internal injuries? Eli stood by, watching quietly, his thoughts racing. Who was she really? Is she truly different from the stories? Or was she just another dangerous alien hiding her true nature behind a veil of weakness? One thing was certain. She had asked him why he helped her, and for the first time, Eli realized he didn't have an answer. All he knew was that he couldn't leave her behind. The days that followed Lyra's recovery were strange, filled with moments of silence and quiet conversation. The others on the station remained distant, their gazes full of suspicion whenever they crossed paths with her. Eli had expected it, but still he couldn't understand why they couldn't see what he saw. Lyra was not her people. She was different. Lyra was quiet most of the time, often lost in her thoughts. She spent her days resting in the medical bay, recovering from her injuries, and only spoke when spoken to. But when she did speak, her words carried weight, often asked about Eli's life, his past, and his thoughts on the world. She was curious about humans, a race she had only known through stories told by others. Eli never minded the questions. He was happy to talk, though the conversations were sometimes uncomfortable. He knew she was different from the others of her kind. But her past still loomed over them both. One evening, as they sat together under the soft glow of the station's artificial lights, Lyra asked him again, "Why are you helping me?" She said, her voice quiet but steady. "You must know what my people have done, the wars, the destruction. Do you not fear me?" Eli looked at her, his expression softening. "I don't fear you," he said. "I fear what people like me think of you." Lyra turned her head to look at him, her violet eyes full of confusion. "You don't understand. My people were soldiers, conquerors. We brought war to countless worlds. They will never forget what we did." "I know," Eli replied, his voice calm. "But I don't think you're responsible for the actions of your people. You don't deserve to be judged for something you didn't do." She looked down at her hands, which were now healing, the cuts and bruises fading with the medics. "Care." She seemed lost in thought for a long time, her face unreadable. "I was once one of them," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "A warrior. I did what was asked of me. I fought for my people, for the glory of the Zarians." She closed her eyes, as if the memory pained her, but I couldn't continue. The bloodshed, the death, it became too much for me. I left. I ran, but I will never escape who I was, Eli. And that's why I can't understand why you would help me. Eli could hear the pain in her voice. He had seen it in her eyes the first time he met her, but now it was clearer than ever. Lyra was trapped in her past, haunted by the actions of her people, actions she couldn't change. He reached out, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Lyra," he said softly, "I'm helping you because I see more than just your past. You're not what your people were. You've changed. You're here now, aren't you? You've come to a place where you can make a difference, where you can be more than what you were. Don't let your past define you." She looked up at him then, her eyes searching his face, as if trying to find the truth in his words. "And what if I can't? What if the past is too strong? What if I can't outrun it?" Eli shook his head. "You don't have to outrun it. Just face it. Start new. You're not alone." For a moment, there was only silence between them, the hum of the station's systems the only sound. Lyra seemed to consider his words carefully, her mind working through the pain and the memories that clung to her like shadows. "Do you really think I can change?" she asked quietly, almost to herself. Eli nodded. "I do. All can. No one's past is beyond redemption, not even yours." Lyra's lips parted as if she wanted to say something, but she didn't. Instead, she leaned back against the wall. Closing her eyes, Eli sat quietly beside her, feeling the weight of her past hang in the air. Over the next few days, Lyra's strength began to return. She spent more time walking around the station, though she still avoided most of the crew. The other soldiers, including Eli's friends, kept their distance, casting wary glances her way when they thought she wasn't looking. It made Eli angry, but he knew he couldn't change their minds. It's not yet, anyway. One afternoon, as they sat in the station's common area, Eli noticed Lyra watching the stars through a viewport. She was silent, her face a mask of contemplation. She seemed distant, her thoughts far away. Eli walked over to her, standing next to her by the window. "The stars are beautiful," Lyra said quietly, as if speaking to herself. "I used to look up at them and wonder where my people would go after all this, after the war. But now I don't know." Eli glanced at her, unsure of what to say. He wanted to tell her that there was still hope, that she could still find peace, but he knew words didn't always heal the wounds of the past. Instead, he said, "You're not alone, Lyra. You don't have to figure it all out on your own." She turned to him, her violet eyes meeting his. "Why do you keep saying that? Why do you care so much?" Eli hesitated. He knew the truth, but the words didn't come easily. "Because I believe in people. I believe in second chances. And I believe that everyone deserves one, even if the galaxy doesn't think so." Lyra looked down at her hands again, her expression unreadable. For a long time, she said nothing. But then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. Maybe I'll believe that one day." Eli smiled, though it was small. It was a beginning. Sometimes, that's all it took. Days turned into weeks, and the situation on the station grew more complicated. Eli had never been more certain that helping Lyra had been the right decision. But the growing tension from the rest of the crew was impossible to ignore. He could see it in their eyes every time they passed by: fear, suspicion, and disgust. But Eli refused to let their judgment affect his choices. He had made up his mind. Lyra was not the enemy. Lyra, for her part, seemed to be adjusting to life on the station. She was no longer confined to the medical bay. The bruises on her face had faded, and her strength had slowly returned. She spent her time walking through the station, her eyes always scanning, always alert, as if she were waiting for something to happen. Eli spent a lot of time with her during the days. He took her to parts of the station that were quiet, where they could talk without interruption. They would sit and watch the stars through the windows, their conversations growing deeper each day. One afternoon, as they sat together near the observation deck, Lyra spoke again, her voice soft but full. "Of curiosity, I've never known humans like you, Eli," she said. "Where I come from, we are taught that others are weak, that we are the strongest species. But you are different. You risk your life for me, even though I'm one of the very ones who destroyed your kind." Eli looked at her, his eyes filled with understanding. "Can't change what others did, Lyra, but you can choose what you do now. It's not about the past. It's about the present, about who you are today." Lyra stared at him for a long time, her expression unreadable. "But what if I'm too broken to be anything else? What if the past is too much to escape?" Eli took a deep breath, leaning back against the wall. "Everyone has their past, Lyra. No one's perfect. But we're all just trying to do our best in the present. It's how we live now that matters." Lyra nodded slowly, her eyes distant, as if she were reflecting on his words. There was something in her gaze that told Eli she was thinking deeply about what he had said, trying to come to terms with it. A few days later, as they were walking through the station, an unexpected situation arose. Some of the crew members' soldiers from Eli's unit stopped in front of them. Eli tensed, but he didn't move away from Lyra. He stood his ground. One of the soldiers, a man named Max, was staring at Lyra with a look of distaste. "Is it true, Eli?" he asked, his voice harsh. "You're really helping her?" Azarian stepped forward, his face serious. "Yes, Max. I'm helping her. She's not like the others." Max laughed bitterly. "Not like the others. She's one of them. It's the same people who killed countless innocent lives. You can't be serious, Eli. You're putting all of us at risk." Eli's patience was starting to wear thin, but he kept his voice calm. "I'm not putting anyone at risk. She's not the enemy. Lyra stood silently beside him, her eyes downcast. She had heard these words before, but hearing them directed at her was still painful. She was so used to being seen as the villain, the destroyer, that it was hard to imagine she could ever be seen as anything else. Max shook his head. "I don't care what you believe, Eli. We'll see what happens when the council hears about this. They won't let you get away with this." With that, Max and his fellow soldiers turned and walked away, leaving Eli and Lyra standing there. The silence between them was thick, filled with unspoken words. Lyra finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you really believe I'm different?" she asked, her eyes searching Eli's face. "That I can change?" Eli didn't hesitate. "Yes, I do. You've already shown me that you're not like the rest. You're trying. That's all anyone can do." Lyra seemed to consider his words, her gaze lingering on him before she looked away. "I wish I could believe that too," she muttered, as the days passed, the tension on the station grew. News of Lyra's survival had reached the higher-ups in the Galactic Council, and there were whispers that they were planning to send someone to investigate. Eli knew it was only a matter of time before they arrived to take Lyra away, or even worse. But despite the fear that gripped him, he couldn't bring himself to turn on her. The bond between them had grown stronger. He had learned more about her, past her pain and her struggle to escape the shadow of her people. Lyra had shown him a side of herself that no one else could see, a side that longed for peace, for redemption. She was more than just a warrior. She was a person, someone who wanted to be better, to move beyond the mistakes of her past. One evening, as they sat together in the observation room, watching the stars twinkle in the distance, Lyra spoke again. "I'm afraid," she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. "Afraid that no one will ever see me for who I am now. I'll always be a monster in their eyes." Eli turned to her, his eyes filled with compassion. "You're not a monster, Lyra. You're just someone who's been hurt. I see you for who you are now, and I'm not going to stop helping you." Lyra smiled faintly, a small spark of hope in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Maybe there is hope after all." Eli didn't respond, but he didn't need to. The truth was in his actions. He had helped her because he saw something in her that no one else did, a person who deserved a chance to change. As the days went on, they both found themselves in uncharted waters. Eli was beginning to realize just how deep his feelings for Lyra were, and he wasn't sure what to make of them. But one thing was certain, whatever happened. Next, he wouldn't regret helping her. Life on the station became harder for Eli and Lyra with each passing day. Despite their best efforts to remain unnoticed, the tension continued to rise. It wasn't just the crew anymore. News of Lyra's survival had reached the higher-ups of the Galactic Council. Eli knew it wouldn't be long before they would send someone to investigate, and he feared that they would take Lyra away from him. He saw it in the eyes of the soldiers and staff around the station. Whispers filled the hallways whenever they thought he wasn't listening. Some believed that Lyra was a danger to them all, a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. They didn't understand that she was not the monster they thought she was. She was just a woman, someone who had suffered and wanted nothing more than a chance to live in peace. But no matter how hard Eli tried to convince them, there were always those who saw her as a threat. The most vocal of them all was Commander Harris, the officer in charge of the station. He had always been wary of Lyra ever since the moment she arrived, and now he was making his feelings known more openly. One afternoon, Eli was called to Harris's office. His heart sank when he received the summons. He had been expecting this. It was only a matter of time before they would confront him about his actions. When Eli entered Harris's office, the commander was sitting at his desk, looking over some documents. His face was stern, his eyes sharp. "Sit down, Eli," Harris said without looking up. Eli obeyed, sitting across from him. "What's this about, sir?" Harris set the documents aside and leaned forward. "This is about the Zarian," he said, his voice cold. "We have received word from the Galactic Council. They want her gone." Eli's stomach twisted, but he kept his voice steady. "What do you mean gone? She's not a threat." Harris narrowed his eyes. "You don't understand, Eli. She is a Zarian. Her people have killed thousands of innocent lives. Do you really think she's any different? You're putting this entire station at risk by harboring her? We can't afford to ignore the orders from the council. Eli felt his blood pressure rise, but he forced himself to remain calm. Lyra is not like the others. She's not her people. She's been through enough. She's trying to change. Harris shook his head. Trying to change? That's a nice idea, but it's unrealistic. We can't trust her. I'm giving you one final warning, Eli. Either you turn her over to us, or I'll be forced to report this to higher authorities. The words hit Eli like a punch to the gut. He knew the consequences. Of defying the council, they would send a military force, and they wouldn't care about Lyra's plea for peace. They would treat her like a criminal, just like they had with the rest of her people. I won't turn her over, Eli said quietly, his voice firm. I believe in her. I believe she's changed. Harris's expression darkened. You're making a mistake, Eli. This is not just about you. It's about the safety of everyone on this station. Eli stood up, his heart pounding in his chest. I won't betray her, not after everything she's been through. Without waiting for a response, Eli turned and left the room, the weight of his decision pressing heavily on his shoulders. He knew this wasn't over. Harris wasn't going to let it go, and soon the entire station would be under pressure to hand Lyra over. But Eli had made his choice, and he wasn't going to back down, back in his quarters. Eli found Lyra sitting quietly by the window, staring out at the stars. She had been distant lately, retreating into herself, lost in thought. Eli's heart ached for her. She had already been through so much. Now the threat of being taken away loomed over her. He sat beside her, his voice soft. Lyra, we need to talk. Lyra turned to him, her eyes filled with concern. What's wrong, Eli? They know about you. The council has sent orders. They want you gone. Lyra's face paled, and she looked away, her eyes clouding with a mix of fear and resignation. I knew this would happen. I've always been a target. I should never have come here. You've risked so much already, Eli. I don't want to bring more danger to you. Eli shook his head, placing a hand on hers. You're not a danger to me, Lyra. You never were. I'm not going to let them take you. She looked at him, her gaze filled with gratitude, but also sorrow. You're a good person, Eli. I don't deserve your kindness. You deserve everything good, Eli said firmly. I'm going to fight for you, no matter what. The room fell silent as Lyra absorbed his words. Eli could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on both of them. But he wasn't going to let fear control their future. He had made his choice, and he would stand by it. The next few days were filled with tension. Eli could feel the eyes of his fellow soldiers on him wherever he went. The whispers grew louder, and he knew it was only a matter of time before someone would make a move. He could feel the pressure mounting on the station. They were all waiting for something to happen. Late one evening, as Eli was walking back to his quarters, he was stopped by Max, the same soldier who had confronted him earlier. This time, Max didn't have the harsh words or the cold expression. Instead, he seemed conflicted, almost uneasy. Eli, Max said, his voice low, I know I've been hard on you about this, about Lyra, but the truth is, I don't know what to think anymore. I've seen how you look at her. I've seen how you've helped her. I don't know if we're doing the right thing. Eli looked at him, surprised by the change in Max's tone. What do you mean? Max shrugged, his expression uncertain. I don't know, I've seen the way she's changed. She's not the enemy we thought she was. But the council, they won't stop coming. And when they do, I don't think we'll have a choice. Eli's heart sank. He knew Max was right. The council's power was immense, and they would not hesitate to use it. But Eli wasn't going to let that stop him. He had made his decision, and he would stand by it. No matter what? The tension aboard the station reached a breaking point. Eli could feel it in the air, thick and heavy. Every day, more soldiers and staff whispered behind closed doors. Rumors spread like wildfire about the council's intentions and what would happen to Lyra. Some of the crew began to avoid Eli altogether, while others shot him looks full of judgment and distrust. Eli tried to ignore it, but it was impossible to escape. Lyra, for her part, had retreated even further into herself. She spent most of her time in her quarters, alone, thinking about her past, her mistakes. and the uncertain future that awaited her. It broke Eli's heart to see her so withdrawn. She was a woman trapped in a prison of her own guilt and fear, and no matter what he did, he couldn't convince her that she wasn't a monster. The message came one morning, loud and clear. The council's envoy would arrive in 2 days. Eli knew that the time to act was now. There was no more room for hesitation, no more time for doubts. If he was going to protect Lyra, he had to do it now, before the council's representatives arrived and stripped her away from him. Made a decision, he would take Lyra and flee. They would go to the far reaches of the galaxy, somewhere the council couldn't reach them, where they could start over. But even as he made that decision, Eli knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be consequences, and he would face them head-on, no matter what. The night before the council's envoy was scheduled to arrive, Eli went to Lyra's quarters. He had tried to speak to her earlier, but she had shut him out, afraid that her presence would bring him even more danger. Now standing at her door, he took a deep breath before knocking. "Lyra," called softly. After a long pause, the door slid open, revealing Lyra standing there. Her expression was guarded, but her eyes softened when she saw him. "Eli," she said quietly, stepping aside to let him in. "What's going on?" Eli closed the door behind him and turned to face her. "We don't have much time," he said, his voice urgent. "The council is sending someone tomorrow to take you away. I can't let that happen. We need to leave tonight." Lyra's face froze, her eyes widening with shock. "Leave, Eli. We can't run. The council will find us. They'll never stop coming for me." "We'll make them stop," Eli replied, his voice full of determination. "I won't let them take you. Not after everything we've been through." She shook her head, her face filled with doubt. "You don't understand. I'm a Zarian. I'm dangerous. I'm nothing but a weapon, Eli. It's all I've ever been. If you take me with you, you'll only put yourself in more danger. I'm not worth it." Eli reached out and took her hands in his, looking her straight in the eyes. "Lyra, you are worth it. You're more than your past. You're not a weapon to me. You're a person. And I'll fight for you no matter what." Lyra looked down at their joined hands, the weight of his words sinking in. I had never known someone who cared for her this much, who was willing to risk everything for her. Her heart ached with a mix of fear and hope, emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. "But Eli," she began, her voice trembling, "what if you're wrong? What if we can't escape? What if I'm too much of a danger?" Eli gently lifted her chin so she was looking at him again. "We'll face that together. You don't have to carry this alone anymore." Lyra stared into his eyes, searching for something she couldn't find. For a long time she remained silent, struggling with her inner demons. Then finally she nodded. "Okay," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Let's do it. Leave." Eli smiled, relief flooding through him. "We'll be fine." But just as they began to make their plans, the door to Lyra's quarters suddenly burst open. Eli and Lyra both turned, shocked to see Commander Harris and 2 armed soldiers standing in the doorway. "I'm afraid it's too late for that," Harris said coldly, his eyes fixed on Lyra. "The council's envoy is already on its way. You're not going anywhere." Eli's heart pounded in his chest, and for a moment he froze, unsure of what to do. The soldiers stepped forward, weapons raised, but Eli stepped in front of Lyra, shielding her with his body. "No," Eli said firmly, his voice filled with defiance. "I won't let you take her," Harris smirked, his expression hardening. "You're in over your head, Eli. You're breaking the law, and you know it. The council will see to it that you're punished for this." "I don't care about that law," Eli said, his voice steady, though his hands were clenched into fists. "I care about her, and I'm not going to let you take her away." For a moment there was only silence, the tension thick in the air. Then, suddenly, one of the soldiers raised his weapon, aiming it at Eli. "You're making a big mistake, Eli," the soldier said, his voice low and threatening. But before the soldier could make a move, Lyra stepped forward, standing beside Eli. Her eyes were filled with determination, the fear from before replaced by a fierce resolve. "Stop," she said, her voice firm. "You don't have to do this. I won't run anymore. I'll go with you, if you promise to leave him alone." The soldier hesitated, his eyes flicking between Eli and Lyra. Harris looked at her, a small smirk playing on his lips. "You think you can stop us?" Harris asked, his tone mocking. "You're just a broken, useless alien." Lyra's eyes flared with anger, her body standing tall and strong. "I'm not useless. I'm not broken. And I'm not going anywhere until you understand that I am. More than what you think I am?" Eli stood by her side, his heart racing. Together, they faced the soldiers and the commander, not backing down. The moment of truth had come. The room was silent, filled with a tense stillness that seemed to stretch for miles. Eli stood beside Lyra, his heart pounding in his chest. Commander Harris and the soldiers before them had not moved, their eyes locked on the two of them. Eli could feel the weight of their glares, their judgment pressing down on him. But he refused to back down. He wouldn't let Lyra be taken. Not after everything they had been through together. "Lyra's not your enemy," Eli said, his voice strong, even as his body trembled with anger. "You're the ones who've made her an enemy. She's trying to change, to be better." Harris stepped forward, his gaze cold. "You're foolish, Eli. You can't change your kind. The Zarians are dangerous, and you're just a human. You don't understand what you're dealing with." "I understand more than you think," Eli retorted, his eyes never leaving the commander's. "I understand that no one can be defined by their past. Not her, not me, not anyone." Lyra stood silently beside him, her hands clenched at her sides. She could feel the tension in the air, the fear creeping back into her heart. She had known this moment would come, when the truth of her past would catch up with her, when people like Harris would make her pay for the things she had no control over. But as she stood there, she realized something. Eli was right. Well, she wasn't. Defined by her past, she wouldn't let them take her away from him. "Please," Lyra said, her voice shaking slightly but full of conviction. "You don't know what it's like to live with a past like mine, to be hunted by your own people, to be forced to carry the weight of everything they've done. But I'm not that person anymore. I've changed. I want to change. Don't take that from me." For the first time, Harris seemed to hesitate. His eyes flicked to Lyra, then to Eli. Before returning to Lyra, there was a flicker of something in his expression, perhaps doubt, perhaps recognition. But it was gone as quickly as it had come. "You don't understand, Lyra," Harris said, his voice quiet but harsh. "Your people brought war. They brought pain. The galaxy will never forgive them. And no matter what you say, no matter how much you beg, I can't let you go free." Eli stepped forward, standing between Harris and Lyra, his fists clenched. "You're wrong. You're wrong about her, and you're wrong about me, too. I won't let you take her." Harris's gaze hardened, his voice cold. "Then you'll regret this." Without warning, Harris gave a signal to the soldiers behind him. The soldiers raised their weapons, aiming them at Eli and Lyra. The tension was unbearable as Eli stood in front of Lyra, his heart racing. He didn't care if they shot him. He wasn't going to let them take her, Eli, Lyra whispered, her voice full of fear. "We don't have much time. You have to run." But Eli shook his head. "I'm not leaving you. We're in this together." Before anyone could react, a loud bang echoed through the room. The door slammed open. Eli's heart skipped a beat as he saw a new group of figures entering the room. Military personnel, dressed in formal uniforms, their eyes sharp with authority. One of them, a tall man with short graying hair, stepped forward and addressed Harris. "Commander Harris," the man said, his voice firm, "stand down. We're here to take over this operation." Harris looked surprised, his eyes flicking between the newcomer and Eli. "What? Who are you?" The man didn't answer directly. Instead, he turned to Eli and Lyra, his gaze softening. "We've been sent by the Galactic Council to assess the situation. The commander's orders are superseded." Harris clenched his jaw, clearly not pleased. "This is a mistake. She's a danger to everyone here." The man didn't respond to Harris's words. Instead, he nodded toward Eli. "You are Eli, correct?" Eli nodded, confused but relieved. Yes, that's me. Who are you? I'm General Corrin, assigned to evaluate the situation on this station, the man said. We've been keeping track of Lyra's case, and we've decided it's time for a different approach. Lyra, who had been holding her breath, stepped forward, her voice trembling. You mean you're not going to take me away? General Corrin looked at her, his expression softening. No, we're not. We've learned enough about you, Lyra. Your past doesn't define who you are now. We've seen the reports, and we know the truth. You've shown remorse for what your people have done. You're trying to make things right. We're here to help you. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. After all this time, after everything she had gone through, there was someone who believed in her. Someone who didn't see her as just the daughter of war, but as an individual with the ability to change. Eli turned to Lyra, his face filled with hope. Lyra, this is it. This is your chance. Tears welled up in Lyra's eyes, and for the first time in a long while, she let them fall. She didn't try to hold them back. She felt something inside her stir a mix of relief and joy. The burden she had carried for so long was finally starting to lift. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you for giving me a chance. General Corrin nodded. You're welcome, Lyra. But remember, you're not alone anymore. We'll help you build a future that's different from your past. You're free to choose your path. Harris stood there, speechless. Below, his eyes darting from the general to Eli and Lyra. He had clearly lost control of the situation. Eli knew this wasn't the end of the fight. The Galactic Council would always be watching. But for now, this was a victory. Lyra turned to Eli, her eyes filled with gratitude. I don't know how to thank you, she said, her voice soft. Eli smiled, his heart full. You don't have to thank me. I just wanted you to see the truth, what you've always been capable of. The two of them stood there, side by side, knowing that the journey ahead would still be difficult. For the first time, it felt like there was hope, a future. Together, they could face whatever came next.